Reviewed, the movie podcast that loves both fine cinema and schlock trash. Tonight we talk about the 1952 film Don't Bother to Knock, starring Marilyn Monroe like you'd ever seen her. With Widmark and Anne Bancroft in her first role. Your hosts are Leo and Cozy. Now, let's get naked and smoke.
Another episode of Blazing Reviewed.
6, 7.
7.
Thanks for sticking with. I hope we sound better today.
Lucky 7. So we have been through 3 now different sets of mics. This is the 3rd set of mics. I had let this task fall to our beloved Cozy, and this is the result. The first was the weird looking Howard Stern mic that you set on your desk, and
No, the first was no mic.
Yes, the first technically was no mic. And then the second set were these weird lavaliers that didn't connect unless you had like a GoPro or not a GoPro, a GTO or
OTG.
OTG.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
had
know.
to have a Hemi.
Unless you were HOTTOTO, you know.
Yeah, be sure. Just read it first and
so be careful when you are
shit.
shopping on Amazon and don't be an idiot like Cozy. But this pair works, so 3rd time's the charm. And here we are, and it's great. This particular episode is very dear to me. Cozy went in blind. If you saw the Instagram story posted earlier, you know that he went in blind, so we can't wait to see your comments.
I went in blind. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't expect this.
He knew Marilyn was in it. He knew kind of my take about, I had called it her opus and spoke so highly of it. Gave him a little bit of backstory about how she had wanted to work with Hitchcock, but Hitchcock didn't think she had the chops. So she wanted to put out a movie that showed that she did, and this was that movie.
It's Marilyn like you've never seen her, and then you don't get to see again.
Exactly.
You know, this is before Mr. President. This is before Diamonds.
They sucked the life out of her.
Yeah, it's before she just kind of got typecast.
Yeah.
And it made me kind of sad because it made me think what other great movies she could have been in and performances she could have done if they would have just let her.
Yes, have some say-so.
Over
her own life, imagine that.
Let her act.
And so for Blazed and Reviewed, episode 7, we bring you Don't Bother to Knock.
Don't bother to knock. If you haven't seen it, go see it. We'll wait.
Yeah, pause and come back. So an interesting thing about this movie that we actually touched on as we were watching it the first go-round is that there is no real score to this movie. It has an opening overture. It has Anne Bancroft singing as the high-heeled cowgirl in the lounge of the hotel. It has some general background noise, and there's a few channel hops on the radio that you catch. But otherwise, there's really no score.
The music, there is no score, which is kind of unique for a movie at this time because there's no music to sort of set the mood or set the tone or reflect the actions of the actors, which annoyed me about old movies when somebody walk in and be like, do-do-do-do-do.
There's no da-da-da.
And especially, thank God, there is no, Marilyn, when she walks in a room and it's like, wah, wah, wah. None of those. The music does this really cool thing. It comes in the movie. It's either, like you said, the singing, the radio, the traffic sounds. It's all internal.
It is a character. Like David Lynch used. Why am I saying used? Why am I?
They use. Auteurs will use.
But why am I speaking of David Lynch in the past tense, man? Pause a moment, everybody. As he used color as a character, this movie very much uses sound as a character. I mean, Marilyn is still her breathy self. She still has that same voice and tone when she speaks. I didn't mean to.
She does. I mean, I guess that's more of her natural
but
voice.
It's used
it's not amped up like it is.
It's used in such a different way because instead of, oh, I didn't mean to spill your drink, it's very much, oh, I didn't mean to lose my mind and go crazy.
So, quick synopsis of what's going on so far. So, there is a couple. One of them is Mr. Howell from Gilligan's Island, and his wife. So they are in town for a convention in New York in a hotel, and they have their daughter Bunny.
He's receiving an award.
He is receiving an award for something.
We don't know what.
Business. Best.
He's best in business.
He's receiving an award for great achievement in the field of excellence.
Like, it's too bad Marilyn didn't have psychic abilities. She could have been like, minnows. Stay away from the minnows.
So, the elevator man, who is played by a guy, I don't remember his name, but you will see him later in like schlocky horror movies, like the Tingler, when he comes on the screen and warns you to get out of the theater before it's too late. He has a niece, Nell, played by Marilyn Monroe.
Not Jodie Foster.
Not Miss Chickapay. So
there's only one of them.
And so she's living with him. She's up from somewhere, and
Oregon, I think she said.
Did she say Oregon?
I think she said Oregon.
And so the couple needs a babysitter. So Eddie, her uncle, recommends her. Oh, she's in town. She can babysit for a couple of hours. It seems like an easy enough job. But things don't go so well. Nell's not well.
Alicia Cook Jr. is Eddie.
Alicia.
I didn't name him. Don't yell at me.
All right. Short for Aloysius.
Probably.
So right off the bat, we can tell that Nell.
He's a Magnum PI.
He's a character actor. He was in a ton of things.
For like, he was an Alf.
Listen, you got to work.
Simon and Simon.
You
the
gotta
Twilight
work.
Zone. The A Night Court.
Night Court. Good chit chats.
The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. I fucking knew that fucker.
He was in a lot of.
He was
schlock
billed
horror movies.
as Frankie though. Frankie Cook in that instead of Alicia. That's why I didn't. Okay.
To be fair, he also talks a lot. He's like the progenital Uber driver in a lot of ways. I guess that's what people had to deal with back then.
Oh yeah, in the elevator. You all right? You need anything? If you do, let me know. I'm all right here. And just let me know. It's an elevator ride, my man.
I know, but you know what? Look.
They did make tips.
They made tips, but you got
Like
to entertain yourself.
Elevator guys would also like drop down and do a quick shoe shine on the way up to 6.
For extra cash.
Yeah.
Who knows what they do? Maybe it was like a deep end situation.
Like there's a whole new thing to explore on that then, I guess. And
So we can tell right off the bat that Nell, there's something off with Nell.
Well, at first you really can write it off, as she later says she's from like Oregon, that she's very much out of her element, and she's only been there like a month, and her uncle, we don't know enough about him, just that he's a bit older, a lot older, and that would make him like what, the greatest generation?
Yeah, it's hard to tell how old he is. I guess he's supposed to be like late 40s. So he would be born like 1910.
So yeah, I think that's the greatest generation, isn't it? Or somewhere in the cusp of that and
or the
boomers.
silent. Actually, the silent. No, whatever.
But anyway, so
speaking
she
of,
could just be a very awkward farm girl arriving in New York.
Well, she seems very simple and I guess sort of Midwestern, so they instantly sort of trust her. She seems like this sort of gentle, simple girl. But I thought for a second that the bar where Anne Bancroft sings, Lynn Lindsay,
the high-heeled cowgirl,
in the middle of New York, is Western themed for
yes.
some reason, and she sort of has a Western attire, and the other girl takes pictures definitely has one. It sort of is the same way that Nell is so out of place where she is.
Correct.
And that Western part is really out of place.
It is.
And it's for pretend. It's like, you know.
But see, you have to take into consideration that at the time, like depression, right? New York, Paris, London, Shanghai were all heavily competing to be the best, most magical city.
Sure.
And so they all, and New York included, kept trying to bring elements of other places, so you didn't have to go there.
The Orient, as they'd say.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a small world of the city.
it just reminded me of like a hokey hotel that would have been on like Route 66, you know. But this is New York. They have no reason to be so gimmicky. I don't know. It just struck me as odd. Maybe it was a normal thing.
There are no two rooms the same in the Waldorf Astoria.
Yeah. You know, maybe it was a normal thing. I don't know. It could have been. But as time, so Nell she's taking care of the child in like her manner is so like methodical, almost like robotic in a way. She answers very simply. She walks to the window, opens it, you know, just kind of like she's just like on autopilot.
I mean, yeah. Oh, there's the fucking dog. This guy lures the dog onto the elevator with fucking Lifesavers mints. I'm not sure exactly what dogs that work on, but if you were wondering, in this case, that specific Dalmatian it works on.
By the way, the man in question is Jed.
Oh, yeah.
Who is Lynn Anne Bancroft's estranged partner in some way, because when he arrives, they have, she had been writing him letters, assumingly Dear John letters.
They had been together a very long time, but he would never give a full commitment. And even though she didn't want marriage, she wanted monogamy. And she didn't want to give up her life either to do the housewife thing that would be expected of her if they got married. But she did want monogamy. And he would constantly run off on her when she'd try to get serious. And she would send him letters like, bro, I'm fucking serious. We need to get serious. Until eventually she sent him the Dear John saying, you don't get serious? Fine, bye.
And then he shows up.
He shows up and she's like, I don't want to talk to you.
They have this, like, I'd say, like, really interesting back and forth between the two of them that is both familiar and...
It's the reverse Orlando, because Anne Bancroft is female Orlando who is like, oh, I adore you. Fucking lie, bro. And she's like, no, I don't want this. Not that oh, I adore you, we belong together, but then Marilyn flips it the other way. You even made the comments when she was talking.
When she was, right.
You belong to me.
But Jed and Lynn, they're really like the familiar thing. There's a bit at the end when they're sort of trying to make up, and they're probably like in this way they never can see eye to eye, because he walks up and says, "Can I buy you a drink?" And she says, "No." He goes, "Buy me a drink." And the bartender's like, "I'll buy you both a drink." And he's like, "I don't want any."
He goes, "Let me buy you a drink." She goes, "I'm not thirsty." He goes, "Well, buy me a drink." She goes, "I won't." "No, I will not." So that's when the bartender's like, "I'm going to buy you both a drink."
And then they don't want it.
And he goes, "Maybe next time."
Yeah. It just reminds me of the way a couple would be like, I want to do this, but I want to do this. Fine, we'll do yours. No, we can do yours. Like,
No, it's when you go out to eat.
Yes.
So do you want the burger or the steak? Oh, I don't know, I'm leaning towards the chicken. Okay, so do you want the chicken then? The waiter's right here. I don't know, I really want the steak. I really think I'm going to get the steak. Well, then why don't you get the chicken, then we can split it. Why don't you both shut up and just order food?
It's this useless dance. It's too many laps. You got to go around things.
How about you just get what you want? I'm going to get what I want.
I'm going to give a little...
Which, speaking of Taco Bell's new nacho fries, oh my God. Garlic ranch.
I'm the guy in 821 across the court. Can I ask you a question?
Well, I don't know. I suppose so. Are you sure you want me?
Yeah, you're the one I want, all right. You doing anything you couldn't be doing better with somebody else?
If you want.
Does that mean come on over? When I stepped into that room, I ran smack into an adventure you don't forget in a long time. Because the screen has never shown this kind of woman before. The kind that reaches out in the loneliness of the night to a stranger passing by. I should have seen the warning of danger in her eyes. For what happened in that suspense-filled night was about to change my entire life. Why didn't you tell me you were working here?
I'm not. I'm just doing it for tonight.
Yeah, I know. You're an heiress. Tomorrow morning, you ride through your estate. Side saddle.
She made you say that.
I believe in a drink, a kiss, and a laugh now and then.
I still like to laugh. But not at myself.
What do you want? Hearts and flowers forever and ever? Love?
Don't be afraid to say it. It's not a dirty word.
I can't figure you out. You're silk on one side and sandpaper on the other.
I'll be any way you want me to be.
Why? Why is it so important?
Because I belong with you.
Pat, it's 8:09. I'm frightened. I think something's happened.
You all right?
Yes.
So there was it's based on the book Mischief by Charlotte Armstrong. And much like this movie, Charlotte Armstrong was a bit of an anomaly. She was a writer of suspense and thrillers, and then she took a turn with this book and she brought the suspense like into a domestic setting, like into the home, as they'd say. And her books were celebrated for that, and she won like Edgar Awards. She had a book called Balloon Man that was popular, and a book called Chocolate Cobweb, which is a little iffy.
So interestingly enough, I am only reading on my Kindle. I have my reading is split this year, because if I don't make it challenging, I'll just consume books like a glutton. And that's not ever a good thing. So I am breaking it down, and I'm only doing books that were turned into movies on my e-reader. So I'm actually now looking this up. There it is.
I heard the difference in the book and the movie. I've never read the book, but I looked at reviews of the book. It seems like they kind of take multiple perspectives, because Bunny, the child, gets more space in the book.
Okay.
Because Bunny, poor Bunny in this movie.
Bunny, first of all, this is at a time when the idea of stranger danger definitely didn't exist, for all the good it did in the first place. But the concept definitely didn't exist. Like, I need a babysitter. Hey, my niece is available. Cool, send her over.
But I can see that they would trust her. The elevator guy vouches for her. It's his niece.
I don't know the elevator guy.
No, but I mean, again, of the time, what are you going to do?
As a mom, I'd be like, honey, I can't accompany you, or we all have to go.
There is a lot about trust in the movie, and there's even more in the book, apparently, about trust. Mm-hmm. And these characters do have a different level of trust with each other.
Well, notice that Jed tells her, we're just skipping all over the place here, but on the level of trust, Jed tells her that he went to this room after they had a fight. And she's not stupid. Anne Bancroft's not stupid, or rather, Lynn Lindsay is not stupid. And she realizes why he would have gone to this woman's room, right? But yet, she trusts him that this woman is insane. He did nothing with her, that it made him realize he does want monogamy with her, and then walks up to help Marilyn's character.
Jed takes care of everyone in this movie. Every single person.
But at no point does Lynn Lindsay go off on Jed. Like, you literally, we just broke up 20 seconds ago and you're off in some bitch's room.
There's also a scene later we'll get to. We should have put in the beginning. Did you want to put a heads up about the issues?
Yeah, actually, we're usually, no, we're not. We're never better than this. We're never better than this. So trigger warning, mental health, trauma from loss, and unaliving, or at least unaliving attempts. However, I will say, anyone who knows anything about attempting to unalive oneself using razor blades on certain body parts, there's a specific way you have to do that for it to be effective, and this movie uses the old way that actually is ineffective. So it does give almost a chuckle to anyone with a history. I don't know that it's truly as triggering as it could be.
They present it pretty bluntly in this movie, I'd say.
It's very blunt. It's not meant to trigger or target, and it's brief.
It is also an essential element to
It is.
Nell's character.
Her scars
very
are
much.
exposed only twice for just a very brief period of time to make a point that needs to be made. Which also brings a lot of question about mental health at the time, because the first time you see the scars is to make it very clear that she's not okay and hasn't been for quite some time. But the second time you see the scars is with Jed, and the stigma is all over his face.
He's concerned that fact that she did it to herself. I mean, like, despite the fact that he's a veteran, he's seen a lot of violence, a lot of trouble. He's probably never
Anyone
seen
that
something
he
like that.
has seen unalive himself was somebody that was suffering from severe wounds, physical wounds.
Sure.
And therefore it would have been considered a mercy.
I'm going to say, too, that, just as the same way mixed nuts, we're getting into the BNRCU, the same way that mixed nuts approached the queer element with, not for its time, compassion and without a judgmental eye, I think the mental health issue in here is handled compassionately.
As soon as he realizes why she's a crazy bitch, that's why I
Right.
said I don't agree with the category that she's in. The typecast part I give you, but the heroes to villains I don't agree with, because one, Marilyn has never played a hero. Okay, she's never played a hero.
And I wouldn't
this
call
is
her a
not a
villain.
villain role. It's not
No,
a villainous role.
I wouldn't call her a villain in this at all.
But they do play up the villainous element for the purpose of suspense.
For the suspense, I'm going to say, again, Marilyn's performance, she is wound up tighter than an 8-day clock in this movie, and she effectively makes me nervous when she's on the screen. You get the sense that she is going to snap at any moment, and this woman is capable of just about anything. And also, her demeanor changes on a dime. When she's with the child, it's one person. When she's with Jed later, it's another person. When she's with her uncle, it's another person. When she's later in the lobby with the police, it's another person. And like Jed said, you're silk on one side, sandpaper on the other side, which is putting it very lightly. Because she's more of a lament configuration.
It saddens me so much that more people don't know about this movie.
Everyone knows about Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, which How to Marry a Millionaire was a little bit better.
All of her
against the
work is
type.
great. Don't get me wrong. I've always loved Marilyn. But this is Marilyn. I can't say it enough. This is Marilyn as you've never seen her before. And need to, like now.
This
like,
movie-
again, if you still haven't paused to go watch this movie, why? Go.
You have to see it. It did make me a little bit, I already said this. But this movie should be known more than it is. Marilyn Monroe has reached the status that very few celebrities get, where she is iconic, mythical, and there's so many quotes attributed to her that she never said, but we want that to be true. She's just this this ephemeral presence that's gone, very young, but she should be known more for this rather than just her.
I think one of the reasons for that is that this role is not the goddess we all know. The goddess is not on her fucking pedestal in this film.
Not to mention,
It is a
that-
different goddess. This is no longer Aphrodite of the clamshell. This is Lilith, and she's in the fire and the flames.
By the way, Anne Bancroft's first movie,
It is.
and she knocks it out of the park. I was really looking forward to see what Anne Bancroft would do with these roles, because she's like a Marlene Dietrich, where she can take a small role and make it very memorable.
But she also knew not to overplay it, because this movie is not about her role. She's very much a supporting character, and even really lesser than a supporting character. She's important. Her role is important, because without her role, you don't have him calling Marilyn.
Right, and it's also kind of an antithesis to the relationship, quote unquote, that he has with Marilyn later. Because they are familiar and they are safe together. Mm-hmm. He says he's in love with her at the end of the movie. If there had never been a Marilyn Monroe, I think Anne Bancroft could have played the lead in this.
Oh, she needed to stay exactly where she was. You would have You would have wanted to put a young Lana Turner in this role.
You think?
Or possibly Jean Harlow.
Or Gene Tierney?
Gene Tierney.
Gene Harlow was long gone by here.
That's true. Gene Tierney could have done it.
Gene Tierney would have not.
Vivian Lee could have done it.
Vivian Lee would have done it. She didn't even have to act that much. Vivian Lee could summon everything in her. Also, I had read, so Marilyn, again, chilling at times, she actually channeled her own mother to play this role. She was basically acting to the child the way her mother acted to her.
Yeah. From the flip side, from the mental health is not well side of Marilyn's character of Nell, you have all of these men trying to fucking control you. And what did Marilyn go through in her life?
She lost her husband, I suppose. He went off to the war, the same war that Jed went to,
Yeah.
and he flew across the ocean and never came back.
Yeah.
And of course, she suffered great trauma for that. She's been institutionalized
3
for it because they
years.
can't believe she's not cured yet. I
Yeah,
guess
this was before they knew there was no curing stuff like that.
or they lost the cure.
Yeah, that's
They-
possible.
you know,
That,
they-
that makes me wonder, like, did they find a cure for
For
PTSD?
I mean,
and then just went, we don't need that, threw it away.
Right, like we said, Jed's a veteran. He's probably got his own trauma.
So this is right after World War II, because that would have been the war he was in. And so that would have been the peak of the discovery of LSD. So maybe that was the cure, and they had to stop giving it to her.
You've heard like the legends that Marilyn Monroe was like an MK Ultra agent. just
Maybe
like
this
Britney
was like
Spears and
secret
Lindsay Lohan.
messages.
It could have been. And no, they came later when she had to turn into this like typecast.
Yeah.
That's when she was activated, unfortunately. I mentioned she wanted to work with Hitchcock. Poor Marilyn. Don't you think she would have, considering what Hitchcock did to
That
his
would have fucking done
actresses,
it.
I think she might have, who knows? It might have made her quit Hollywood. It might have hurt her worse.
It might have, it would have put her on the map in ways that cannot even be described right now. Like, I'm trying to think of someone else that ever did it.
What do you mean, never did what?
Went from the typecast dumb blonde, dumb bimbo, whatever. Like, that's what Elizabeth Berkley tried to do, going from Jessie Spano as a young kid to Nomi Malone in Showgirls. Mm-hmm. Was not a successful attempt, but she tried. It's what most child actors try to do, but Marilyn was going in reverse. Nobody wanted to let her be a serious actress.
Leading up to this movie, this is her like 13th movie.
Something like that.
To be fair, she was in a lot of movies. And the movie that got her this role was Clash by Night, which was made by a friend of the show and Smut, Fritz Lang. Later, way earlier made Metropolis. She played with Paul Douglas, great character actor, but she was also like an abused woman in this movie. Not to mention, she spent most of the movie in like short shorts and a bikini top bra, basically.
Yeah, see, they absolutely did not sex Marilyn up.
Even in that movie, she was
movie.
not sexed up, and she was not in these sexy positions. There's scenes where she is like manhandled, abusively. She plays a woman put upon in that movie, and so it got their attention. So this movie was made as a vehicle for Marilyn to go on and do more of these roles.
Yes. This was the movie that was meant to get her in with Hitchcock.
And speaking of Hitchcock, when I read about this movie, I immediately thought of Hitchcock. Now I can't remember. It's my favorite Hitchcock movie, Shadow of a Doubt, where the girl is named after her uncle, and he's actually a killer, and he shows up, and it's a domestic thriller like this is, like the same one that Armstrong wrote. And as Hitchcock said, it brings murder into the home where it belongs. So it did remind me, and it turns out the director, Roy Ward Baker, was an assistant director to Hitchcock. And he helped him make The Lady Vanishes, and he was a cinematographer for David Lean. And later in his life, he made horror movies for Castle. The Castle, he directed Christopher Lee and some of the Draculas. And then Alicia
Billy Castle
most definitely worked with him.
Billy Castle.
So he probably took little Alicia or Freddie or Frankie.
If you get a chance, you need to watch that Cursed Films on Shudder.
You told me about that.
The first one, season 2, I believe. The first one is The Exorcist, or maybe the first episode of.
Oh, it's one of those.
And what curse films? What
Poltergeist?
do you think you were getting? Yeah,
I thought it
Poltergeist
was.
is in there.
I don't know. I thought it was a found footage movie. By the way,
No.
I watched a found footage movie. I had to tap out, watch the rest later. The Poughkeepsie tapes.
Oh, please.
Oh, you were non-phased? I just wasn't in the mood. You know the other movie that made me tap out was The Nightmare, the movie about sleep paralysis, because I was
seen that
watching it in the basement all alone, and it was just it was creeping me out.
I haven't seen that one yet. I can't remember the last. See, the one that fucks me up the most, and here's the funny thing, is that I can't watch it unless I'm in total pitch dark. I have to be in pitch dark. I have to simulate the environment, and it fucks me up every time, is The Descent.
I love The
I don't
Descent.
get fucked up over those creatures, though. Those creatures are meh, whatever. It is the claustrophobia element that they captured so goddamn flawlessly that I watched that movie with my head tucked up like a fucking turtle, and I'm all like hiding behind a blanket because, oh my God.
Caves terrify me. Not that I ever have to go in one.
Like, right, we don't know what's coming.
So we're with Marilyn in the room. She puts on the mom's clothes. She
Yep.
puts on her dressing gown, her kimono, her earrings. She puts on her lipstick. She puts on her perfume.
Apparently a lot of perfume, because Homeboy makes a comment and she's like, oh, I guess I spilled a little bit.
Yeah, she douses herself. She gets very colonic. Because she wants to step in this role because she never got to be the wife. Her husband never came home. So naturally she wants to play house and play pretend. She's desperate this whole movie. Desperate for...
That's exactly what it is. So the little girl is asleep in the bedroom, and she can either be there or not in Marilyn's head. I don't know if she's factoring in, like, maybe that's their daughter or not. I think she just doesn't care that she exists. But on one hand, she gets to be that mom and wife. So she's dressing up like the mom and the wife, and in her head, that's her little girl sleeping while her husband is off doing whatever he's doing. But then the man is like, hey, I'm right across the hall. I saw you like grooving over there. What are you doing? We should fuck.
We should mention, the way he sees her across the courtyard in the other room, and then he goes to the fire escape poster and figures out that she's in room 809, calls her, and at first she does the right thing, like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
And then I think she puts two and two together and be like, oh, that's what's missing here in my
little
fantasy. I'm
fantasy.
missing my husband. So in her desperation just to have somebody with her, she decides like, oh, well, this is my chance to get a man over here. And she does semaphore with the blinds and invites him over and proceeds to make up a story that she got this from Paris. That's her sister's suitcase. What are these men's shoes under the bed?
It's my dead husband's sister's.
My sister's husband's shoes, because, you do.
But
you
he's
travel with
gone,
them.
and that's why she's there.
Everything, like, she makes off the top of her head, and she makes these, again, I love in a movie where characters make terrible decisions and bad choices, like they're human, and she continues to make these web of lies that do not connect in any way. But it doesn't matter. She just is like, she doesn't care about giving accurate answers, it's just stop talking to me.
Yes.
When the couple ask her if they can help her, her answer is like, please stop talking to me. Stop asking me questions. Leave me alone. Because you're intruding on her fantasy.
Exactly. I don't have answers for you because they don't exist in the fantasy world that I have built in my head.
Do you know who I thought of the entire time is Pearl?
Yeah?
She really is Pearl in this movie. In a lot of ways, Pearl had a husband. If you watch the trilogy, I watched Pearl first, and I think I enjoyed it more that way because her husband was real, spoiler alert, but the whole time I thought he was imaginary in her head. The way she, like the Scarecrow was a fit-in husband.
Pearl was all right. I really think it's stupid that people are saying it's like the alternate universe for what happened to Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
They both fucked scarecrows.
Here's the thing. You can't tell me that it's an alternate ending to a completely different universe when it is literally the prequel to its own existing trilogy.
We talked last episode about that awful movie that tried to link David Lynch with The Wizard of Oz. By the way, he died right after we had that episode.
I feel kind of like maybe we did those.
So in the same way, and stop trying to make the Wizard of Oz also Dark Side of the Moon. Stop it. Leave it alone. Why can't it be? Why can't we have nice things? It's a movie I loved every Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you ruin every artist, guys.
It's its own thing.
Dolly's not that deep.
Oh God, don't get me started. Speaking of fascists.
Dolly's not that deep, guys.
But
she's not.
But she's not Pearl. She's her own thing. But she gives monologues in this movie that are masterful. When she's talking about her life story, about her lost husband, it's just her. And
she's doing it in a way where it is so obvious that behind those beautiful eyes, she is literally reliving it.
But she manages to really blur the line between fantasy and what's really happening. You know, she talks about her uncle being like not very nice to her, and that could be true. It turns out he's not very nice to her later. But she also says that she's going to South America later. So it's really hard to really, know if she's talking about the real world or her fantasy world.
Yeah.
And speaking of sound, also, they leave her. I wondered that back in this time when you're left alone in a room, like a hotel room, and the mom was like, "We don't have anything to read. What are you gonna do?" I probably would end up putting on this gown and jewelry.
Right, like there's
lose your mind.
But there's the book that she was reading to Bonnie, so there's at least one book.
Okay, I guess you're right.
But it's like fairy tale kid stories, so I don't know if that counts for a lot.
I mean, send your uncle to get a newspaper or something.
He offered to go get her magazines, and she told him no, because she didn't want to be disturbed in her fantasy.
You know, it was a little detail then, too. They offered her candy, and she's like, "I don't eat candy." And later, she's stuffing her face with candy.
Yeah, I think it's that whole persona. The nanny figure wouldn't be eating candy.
She's putting up on the persona.
But as soon as that little girl is closed up in that bedroom, she's no longer a nanny.
I also thought that maybe it was a sign that she's withholding pleasure or indulgence from herself. And then later, when everybody's gone, she's like, "Fuck it. I'm going to get me a husband. I'm going to go to South America. I'm going to let this happen to me."
Well, I don't know if she'd really thought it out all that far at that point yet.
Well, that's true. She because you had asked what was her plan of getting out, and there wasn't one. She didn't have one.
So,
like most,
like I said, when I was a teenager acting out, doing stupid shit, there was a layer of degrees of consequences that I was willing to, like, okay, if I do this, I know this is going to happen. Worth it. If I do this, this is going to happen. Worth it. If I do this, this is going to happen.
Not worth it.
We're going to pull back. I don't think that that's where we want to be. And Marilyn does not have a concept whatsoever in this movie about the degrees of consequences.
No, because she's obsessed. She's not obsessed with Jed, really. She's just obsessed with this idea.
Philip.
And she'll do anything to keep it. We'll see later that she'll commit violent acts. She'll lie. She'll do something to Bunny, we'll get to later, just to keep the man there. She's just obsessed with this.
And it's not even him necessarily, because then she's convinced he's Philip. Because not until the end does she really look at him and be like, "You actually don't look anything like motherfucking Philip."
Well, he finally convinces her that, he sort of brings her to her senses. That's later on in the movie. Right now she's building up the tension. And there's a scene where she's also giving a monologue, asking him about the war and sort of feeding him lines. I think she's giving him her husband's story, and she's doing it in the mirror, which is really interesting. I love mirror shots because they always sort of have an underlying meaning. And in this case, like I said, she's talking to herself. She's talking at people. She's talking to herself to build her own fantasy.
So
you're having a fantasy.
So here's the thing. Right before he calls, he's like, "I should come over." And she's like, "No."
Right.
"But talk to me a minute." And then knock, 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 here comes Uncle Eddie. What's the last thing Uncle Eddie says to her before she invites him over?
What do you mean? Before she invites
Jed over.
The last thing Uncle Eddie says is take everything
off, put your own stuff on. But he's like, "You'll get another man, don't worry."
Oh, that's the thing.
So what does she do?
Eddie's not...
All right, I'll get another man.
Right.
It's not until he tells her that he was a pilot that she puts the Philip overlay onto him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that monologue happens. All of a sudden, Jed now just became a reflection of Philip.
That's true. Also, Eddie, like most people there, not equipped to really handle someone like Nell.
Well, yeah. Few people are.
He's an elevator man. He's in his own little box all the time. And here we see...
She's not the kind of crazy he's used to seeing on the streets of New York.
Not at all. And when Bunny wakes up and notices there's a strange... Well, she walks in on them kissing and notices there's a strange man. And although the child is treated with a little bit of a... not a casual hand, especially by Nell gets really threatening. She says, she wants the kid to be quiet. And number one, there is a scene where she opens the window and lets Bunny look out, and her hand is gracing her back.
It's coming up here, actually, because
it's coming up. So
he ends up going back in and being like, come on out, join us.
So she's the hand on the back is a gesture of both affection and of threat, kind of the way sort of like, abuse, if you are, say an abuser can provide both abuse and comfort.
Well, yeah, because it's a secure thing. Like if Kiki's leaning out my window, I'm usually holding her back.
Right.
Because it's the best place for me to grab her if she leans too far.
That scene made me very nervous.
So you remember earlier we were having a conversation about the Blaze review lineup, and I suggested Rebecca, and you said you hate Rebecca. And I said, to this day...
I hate it, I just didn't like it.
To this day, Mrs. Danvers scares the absolute shit out of me.
I'll give you that.
She has that Mrs. Danvers element going on here. Like, don't tell me you didn't see Rebecca and not want to jump out that window yourself.
Fair enough. Leo's eating a taco right now, by the way.
I'm behaving.
Very quietly. I can't believe how quiet she's eating a taco. No one would know if I hadn't pointed it out.
Yeah,
very
thanks
rudely.
a lot, asshole.
Girls gotta eat.
I'm over here trying to make sure I'm not chomping in the mic, fucker.
I bet it's not. I probably wouldn't even
Mind
notice.
if I sit down? That's a pretty negligee.
I got it in Paris.
Staying long?
Where?
New York.
Oh, no. No, I'll only be here a few days. I'm going to South America.
Well, now that's funny. So am I.
You came over to flirt, didn't you?
Well, I guess that was the general idea.
I don't mind, as long as you're not grouchy about it.
Oh, I'm never grouchy. Ruth? Your name?
No, it's Nell.
First initials are.
Oh, that's my sister's suitcase. She's out.
Oh? How are you going? To South America.
Oh, by sea.
Oh.
Are you really going?
Mm-hmm.
How?
By turtle. I own a big turtle. I'm gonna ride on his back.
Well, someday I will. I'm going to go down there and drink a lot of coffee. I'm going to talk to all the parrots. Maybe we'll go together, Billy. What is it now?
I ran out of girls like you when I was 14. And the name is Jed, not Billy. And what's his name, and where's my hat?
They belong to my sister's husband. He's out of town, and I'm staying here with her.
All right, I'm sorry. Sometimes I'm cynical. I just focus on the simple facts.
I like you.
Thanks.
I'll probably dream about you tonight.
Don't be rash.
What do you do in life? I mean, your occupation. Are you a salesman? Or a businessman? No, you couldn't be a businessman. You're too young.
I fly a fat cat between here and Chicago.
No, I'm serious.
So am I. A fat cat is a 60-passenger airplane.
You're a pilot.
That's right. Anything strange about that?
Yes. That's strange. Did you fly a bomber during the war?
Who didn't?
You came home and you'd lost step. You didn't have any plans.
Well, I thought of becoming a financier, but you see, I was broke, so that made it a little
You didn't
tough.
have any profession. You said, why not do what I've been doing? Fly.
Yeah, something like that.
There's money in cargo from the States to the islands. You crashed in the water,
I've cracked up a couple of times, water
in
and
the
land.
ocean in '46 on the way to Hawaii. But you weren't killed. You were only lost.
Hey, wait a minute. It was in Lake Michigan. My #1 caught fire.
You
I had
were
to
rescued.
ditch.
You came back.
Why get so excited about it?
Again, oh, with Bunny. So when Bunny does come out, Marilyn just leers at her. She comes at her like aggressively, and Jed steps in and is sort of comforts her, and offers. Like I said, Jed takes care of everyone who enters this hotel room, and some that don't enter the hotel room.
Oh yeah, it's like they were like, this guy's gonna be a good guy, but not just a good guy, like a really good guy.
He's a
like
really
a
good guy.
stupid, ridiculously,
Which
awesomely good guy.
I wonder if he's that way in the book as well. He might be. This movie seems to be pretty true to the book from the synopses that I had read.
I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna get it.
And it's interesting because it is the movie. The book is written by a woman.
Right.
The movie is not, but it still seems to have that. Well, no, scratch that. I'm not sure what I was going to say. Being that they stayed true to the book, perhaps it is. And again, there is a lot of compassion in this movie. There's, like we already said, compassion to Nell's condition. You could say Jed is an incredibly compassionate person. Even Lynn is very compassionate.
Which is surprising because like when he's talking with Lynn, she's like, I don't want you anymore because you don't want to be monogamous. And he's like, a boy's got to do what a boy's got to do. And you're kind of setting him up. Then he goes and he immediately sees Marilyn Monroe and is calling her up. They set him up to be a fuckboy.
You know, interesting too. I noticed that the sort of how he started out as you could say the aggressor.
Yeah, like I said, they set him up to be a fuckboy.
He's setting up. He's in charge of me. He wants to meet this girl. He reaches out. You know, he has all the by all accounts, he's going to come over there and take in charge. And then it turns on him to where he's now defending himself.
He runs to Marilyn 10 seconds after the woman he loves is like, nah. Like a big old baby.
I don't get his motivation except that he just sort of like feels rejection and maybe
I wonder
just
if that's part of
opportunist.
it, though. Is that part of it? The growth he goes through in this like what hour?
I will say, because I was going to save it at the end, but I think that is what brings him and Lynn back together, is that she sees him as a compassionate, caring person taken care of. It's like, oh, this guy is cut out for like a life with.
Right.
And maybe he sees that as well.
Here comes your scene at the window.
Oh, the scene at the window. As a parent, made me very nervous. And, just, again, one of those things that you think that Nell is just capable of anything, any minute. And
bitches sometimes just be crazy.
They're kind of opposite, too, because while Nell is desperate for this life, Jed at first is very, he's afraid of it or dismissive of it.
The man drinks rye whiskey.
This guy can't get enough rye.
He carries a bottle with him.
Which you thought he said brine at
I
first.
did.
So we kept joking that they're
like,
drinking sea monkeys. I want to say as well that for a noir film, and I would definitely call this a noir film, it doesn't have most of the tropes you'd expect from a noir film. It doesn't have a voiceover. It doesn't have a male... It's not a male-dominated film. It doesn't have a score. It's confined. Everything happens in this room. It's a very conservative, very sparse.
It's very
set.
like The Bad Seed. There's a handful of outside scenes.
A Rope, speaking of Hitchcock, all takes place in that room.
Yes, and everything else takes place in like you can do this as a stage play. I would love to see this done.
Could it have
as a
been
stage
one?
play? It could have.
I would love to see it as a stage play.
I don't see why not.
Absolutely, you wouldn't need anything. And so they get the girl hanging out the window.
You only really need the 2 sets and an elevator box.
Very easy stage play. We'll have to find out if it was. So, oh my God. So when the child halfway goes out the window, which Jed rescues her, because this is how much she wants to be alone with Jed. She will defenestrate a child. The way Putin.
She's not crazy. She's sick.
I never called her crazy, did I?
No.
No. She's not well. Hopefully she goes on to get help. But she's noticed by an older couple who are regulars at this hotel.
This is like the 30s. They probably lobotomized her after this one.
Well, if it takes place when it was made, it would be 1952.
Okay.
So I think
maybe they were past lobotomies by then.
They might have been, hopefully. So an older couple, not elder, whatever. They
Don't
notice her.
Don't be a peeping pansy.
Peeping what? Is that a female peeping Tom?
I guess.
Or is that what he calls her?
Yes.
Okay. So, by the way, the older woman I knew her immediately as the mother of the pianist's mother in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Yes.
The one's like, I'll be your secretary. I'll make a jolly good secretary. Who had her son out of wedlock, and he never lets her forget it. She was also she was the influence for whomst?
The nanny.
Yes.
In 101 Dalmatians.
And there's a Dalmatian in this movie.
There is a Dalmatian.
That's the dog that is very stubborn, who is not on a leash.
Who eats mints.
The dog has the best breath of any dog you've ever met.
Yes.
And also she was one of the geese in Aristocrats.
Yes.
Aristocats.
I don't remember which one, but yes.
We'll
I'm
say
sure she did other Disney stuff too, but nothing's coming
I
to
don't
mind off
doubt
the
it.
top of my head.
She's
like Edwin.
Yeah. Yeah, but fantastic in this role as the peeping petunia. She notices the girl...
Peeping pansy.
Peeping pansy. She notices the girl hanging out the window like Michael Jackson style, who screams, and then so she wants to call the house detective, which, by the way, has to be the easiest job, and this guy's awful at it.
Right?
He can dress like a detective, and that's about where it ends. And...
I love that she has an elephant and not a teddy bear. I don't know why.
I wondered what that was. I thought it was a gorilla at first.
No, I think that's really cool because most kids have a teddy bear or a doll. And she's asked her about a doll, but...
Oh, right. So as she keeps making noise, Nell is like, you have a doll at home? And if that doll cries too much, you get rid of it, don't you? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's
what
like
if you
she's
found
Fat
out-
Tony threatening.
Right, what if you found out that doll was spying on you? What would you do then? You'd get rid of her, wouldn't you?
And scares
Bunny is like,
Like I said, she's in this movie. She happens to. It gets to a point where every time she's on screen, you're a little on guard. You're a little nervous.
she's scary. Yeah, she's a little fucking scary. Mrs. Danvers level fucking scary.
Again, I can't think of a. Also, we really tried hard to get a Tilda connection in this movie. The most is the typical one where
Tilda can play everyone.
she can play everyone. I would keep Richard Skidmark.
It's like that name a movie, keep one actor, and the rest are Muppets. It's like that, but the rest are Tildas.
She could definitely play Eddie. She'd knock Lynn out of the park.
Oh God, yeah.
She could play Bunny.
She could. She could play the Dalmatian.
I'm not gonna go that far, but sure. And you know what? Let's do it. Let's go ahead and do it now early. Let's do the B&R Bechtel test. Is there a mother maiden crone?
Well,
I think it'll be an easy one.
yes. Although it's a superficial one because it's just not that deep when it comes to those three specifically as a tie-in. Not that it's not a deep movie, just not on that level. But you have the old lady trying to look out and protect, even though she's a busybody. She was right. That little girl was actually in danger. And she wanted to do something about it. You also have Marilyn, as the innocent, needs help, and of course Bunny. But arguably, Lynn herself goes through the mother maiden crow because she starts as having come out of that maiden into that mother, quote unquote, as in I don't want to be yours anymore, I want monogamy and that's it, and into that quote unquote crone with now taking him in, accepting him for who he is, accepting herself for who she is and what they can have, based solely on the mental health of this woman they have both now been touched by.
Twist. Jed kind of becomes a crone.
Yeah.
Because like I said, he takes care of everyone.
Yeah.
Poor at one point, he's got Nell having a breakdown. He's got Bunny, who's terrified. He's got Eddie, who was hit on the head. Mm-hmm. And then he's got the neighbors coming up. And he's got Lynn downstairs, probably, later.
Yeah, because he runs into her
so he
as
has
she's
to
leaving.
do a Cary Grant in Arsenic and Old Lace style friggin' hokey pokey around here to get everything settled. But it may as well be on fire.
But with a level of danger because this bitch might flip.
Who knows?
Like she's responsible for Eddie's head injury.
Jed, which there's no justice for Eddie. At one point, so when Eddie walks in, and Jed is still there, she puts him in the bathroom and rinses out the glasses for the Coca-Colas that Eddie has brought. And when she goes in the bathroom, she leaves the water running. And there's two things. Either she left it running so that Jed wouldn't turn it off to reveal himself, or,
So I'm gonna channel my inner cozy and pull a reach.
Okay.
What if, hear me out, what if the whole thing was a fantasy? Philip was never her fiance, just a boy she fixated on. What if she just fixated? What if it was fucking Swim Fan?
Yeah. Philip could have been another Jed.
Exactly.
Some other time.
Exactly.
Because she said, first she goes on to say
legit died in the war probably, but she made the rest up in her head. He was never coming back for her.
Well, remember, she made a point to say she'd never been in a hotel room, and then she later said, I was in a hotel room once with Philip.
Right. So, reasonably, what if Philip was exactly that? Jed before Jed. It was a Swim Fan situation. Making the ending and all that compassion, we're going to get you help, and letting her walk out so carefully and casually, a lot more sinister and a lot more villainous. Changing the role entirely.
While that is a reach, it's not a far reach.
I'm aware.
When you have a character...
My reaches are usually within logic.
When you have a character like Nell, like Pearl, they do, like I said, they blur the line between what's their reality and what is our reality.
Because female predators, specifically, love to be the victim.
Nell is very much the victim. We have, in a lot. So think of that moment in Psycho when Norman Bates is trying to sink the car that has, what's her name in it? Janet Leigh. And the car doesn't sink for a second, and he gets nervous. You are tricked into, for a minute, rooting for that car to sink, for the killer. Imagine the entire movie is that moment.
Right.
And you've got Marilyn in this.
Right. But it changes the entire ending of her walking away the way she does. We're just going to go get you some more help. In other words, convince some more doctors you're okay, get released, find another man. It's Swim Fan.
Swim Fan's about an obsessed...
but how does she get
Oh, yeah, Swim Fan.
Yeah.
A modern take on a stalker sort of obsessive.
It's very much a modern take on this, only instead of a hotel room, that whole movie takes place in a pool.
I'm Bunny. Who are you?
Well, this is getting real clubby.
You go back now. Go back.
Who are you?
I'm the electrician. I came to fix a fuse.
I don't believe you. The light's been on all the time. I can see under the door.
She yours?
No, she doesn't belong to me. This isn't your room. You go back in there and go to sleep.
I won't. I won't.
Take it easy, kid.
You're a gang. That's what you are. You came to steal my mother's things.
Stop talking like that. She's not supposed to be in here.
You take off my mother's dress.
Say, what is this?
You're to go to bed. Little girls aren't to be up at this hour of the night.
You can't make me do anything. You're only supposed to be minding me.
Okay, we're back with Peeping Pansy.
Peeping Pansy.
Okay,
like,
so
I love the way he talks to his wife. It's so great, and he reminds me of my grandpa. Like, when they're leaving after checking on the little girl and deciding that she's fine, even though she clearly wasn't fine, like, she's yelling and screaming, and the husband is like, shut up!
but you know what? What they have is what the other characters want. That is definitely what Nell wants in the end, and it's what Lynn wants with Jed.
It is, and those three are the stages. You have Lynn and Jed, and then you have Bunny's parents, and then you have the elderly couple.
Very much
And all
so.
three right there in Nell's face.
You do. You have every stage of a monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing too. At the end, when Nell has to go off by herself, I did feel a hint of pity for her because she's leaving. You know, Jed tells her he's in love with Lynn, and then she's sort of like, oh, that's so nice, and then just has to leave. She's in the middle of them and just has to leave that situation and these two lovers to go on loving.
But again,
forever.
she's going to go to the hospital where she'll be declared okay in another couple years and go out and find true love again later.
Yeah, the mental health system care was, I'm sure it wasn't.
It was.
Probably, she wasn't
I'm
getting
not even
dunked
playing it that way, though. I'm playing it on the opposite side of sometimes a psychopath is just a fucking psychopath.
Sure.
That is what Fatal Attraction was about. That's why I got so pissed when they decided to make it into a miniseries and give the Glenn Close character this full-on backstory of trauma.
Oh.
And I was like, no. The point of that movie is that sometimes a bitch is just fucking crazy.
I personally hate when they try to flesh out a character that's already had a full arc that doesn't need it. Like, I don't care. If there was a sequel that was a prequel that showed Nell's backstory, awful.
It
I
would
wouldn't
be
want to see it.
pointless.
I wouldn't care. Why do we need to see it?
No, if you wanted to flesh it out, you could put it into the details of your press release and call it done.
Fine. So we're at a point where they're on to Nell. She's getting interrogated by the precocious pansy, and she's throwing everything but the kitchen sink at them to get them to go away.
Why was that child screaming?
And meanwhile, did we get to the reveal of Bunny yet? Oh no, it's going to happen.
No. Oh my God, Cozy lost it.
I was shocked because they're all in there, and then we have seen her sort of be ominous with Bunny. We've almost seen her tempted to throw Bunny out a window. We get a pan in this room, and I audibly was shocked.
Yes.
Bunny is hogtied on her bed and gagged.
Yes.
And Jed doesn't notice.
No, when
Because
Jed peeks
why would you
in,
expect this?
The room is dark when Jed peeks in, and he's like, "Bunny, are you asleep?"
Who doesn't
and
answer?
No silence. So he assumes so. Why wouldn't you? Because if you knew anything about kids, you know they don't fall asleep in like 10 seconds after you put them in the room. But okay.
Well, he did check, to his credit, before he left. He did sort of want to make sure she was okay.
If you knew anything about kids' silence after 10 seconds of being alone in a room is not them being
Well,
asleep.
Jed doesn't have kids. And also, as far as how kids were treated in this time, he's the most caring man that's
fair.
probably ever lived.
That's fair. That's fair.
Also, on a side note, so when I see movies and people are tied up and gagged, they always have the like thin gag in their mouth. Can you really not talk with one of those?
It's difficult.
But
Like,
you can make a noise.
think of it like a horse with a bit and how hard that is.
But I mean, you can't like. What? It's movie. It's a movie.
To be fair, I don't think they trusted the idea of fully covering someone's mouth. And what was she going to use to fully cover her mouth? I guess she could have shoved something in her mouth.
I don't know. One of her mother's stockings that she was
I think
probably
that was-
wearing those too.
She was wearing those. Don't
when
you remember
did
when
the
she put her
call
leg
forward,
up? And
yeah, to so she's like getting into their intimates, at least for the time.
yeah.
And her,
sure.
by the way, her showing her leg is the sexiest that they made Marilyn in this movie.
Yeah, and the only reason that scene was even filmed was so they could show off that she's putting the mother's stockings on, that she's outfitted as this woman from literal undergarments out.
It was pivotal in the scene. And even
it was not woo, woo, woo.
And even when Jed comes over, she doesn't really entice him sexually necessarily.
Not really.
No, I mean, she clears off the bed and she's, gets comfortable, which he's immediately red flagged by her behavior.
Like the shoes set him off completely.
Well, the shoes made him know that, like, all right, this woman is not being honest with me.
Right.
But then the more she went on, the more he, more than that, like, she's not just dishonest, she's like, maybe she's a...
Yeah, so I'm going to South America.
Do you think that Jed had been around enough people with PTSD from the war that he kind of like caught on to her behavior?
I think as soon as he heard the story, he probably realized that probably happened to a lot of women because he was at war with the men.
So I think that sparked the compassion in him because I think he was familiar with that.
I mean, and clearly Jed is not some heartless douche. Like I said, they set him up to be the fuckboy.
Just like,
but he's not. And as such, he would have probably lost brothers, maybe not biological, but brothers in arms.
Right.
And would have heard about their girls back home enough to have wondered if they would have reacted that way.
That's true. I think that did. I think that
because he said he didn't know Philip or anything, but he would have known people just like him.
And Jed did not run off at the sign of danger, and I think that is that side of him. He was compelled to stay there, regardless that he didn't know her, and he was no longer interested.
Oh, at no point was he hoping
sense.
For a crazy bitch fuck.
No,
he might have been when he first showed up.
And
but
she closed the gap and kissed him, but even then, and she tried later, and he's like taking her arms off of him.
That's when he notices her wrist.
He notices her wrist, and I think that was it. He had a obligation at that point.
In his mind, it clicked. He was dealing with just another child, in a lot of ways.
There you go. One that's more difficult than Bunny.
Yes.
Bunny, who starts to get a little
child.
Yes.
Although Bunny is now a traumatized child.
Bunny, I
think she's going to be fine, though, quite honestly. She's really resilient. I think she's going to be fine.
You think she stays in contact with Jed and Lynn?
I mean, why not? I bet she like summers with them when her parents want to go.
Trauma bond, perhaps?
Yeah, that's not how a trauma bond works.
I would like to. I mean, I don't know. Movie-wise, I mean.
Still, that's not how trauma bond works. But no, I mean, you do tend to...
Do you have a doll at home?
Yes, Josephine.
What if it cried and pestered and spied on you? You'd want to get rid of it, wouldn't you? You'd have to. You turn over and go to sleep. Don't utter one sound. Then we'll all live happily ever after. You and Josephine and me. Is that a bargain?
Yes, ma'am.
Because you build a level of trust, which again, you said this movie's all about trust.
The movie is about
Bonnie
trust.
would have probably gone on later when she got married, like, dude, totally. Lynn and Jed would have been right there at that wedding.
I mean, her parents seem okay.
Yeah.
And Jed and Lynn are definitely okay. So she's got some healthy role models.
I just hope that nobody ever has to see Uncle Eddie again. You think he got fired?
He definitely got fired. He was he was more concerned with his job than the well-being of his niece.
I'd have probably fired him just for that.
Girl. But he definitely lost his job because the house detective shows up. Finally.
Nobody would have even known what was going on if Bunny hadn't knocked the phone off the hook, and we still had live operators who noticed something wonky with the phone and proceeded to listen as Marilyn is talking to her about all the, basically threatening the shit out of her.
By the way, I think the house detective is the one that embodies this sort of like, he's a, quote, masculine character because he's smoking a cigar and he's the house detective, but he's completely inept.
Yes.
And he tells the operator as he's, like, he doesn't, he's not
Rob
on the
Reiner
case.
as a vet.
He tells the operator that she'd be prettier if she smiled, basically.
That's not actually how that went down if you rewatch that. When he made that comment about her smiling, it's because something was wrong and he understood that. Because normally she is a smiley individual. That is what prompted her to tell him what was going on.
You think that's what it was?
That's exactly what it was. Go watch that scene again.
I'll see the dialogue come up now that there's subtitles. So he he tells Lynn about what he's been through. Does he tell her how he got into that situation?
Yeah.
He's fully
He was
fully
fully
truthful
transparent
with her.
about it.
Yeah.
Because there's no way to tell that story without explaining how you got into this situation. You didn't magically show up in this bitch's room.
No. Lynn's not too concerned with it, I think, because she sees the genuine
He's seriously
concern.
in distress over this. Like, I have to go back, he tells her.
Yeah. All right, so the damn.
So there's your dog.
They finally get the Dalmatian. Somebody steps on his
Frickin'
tail.
dog.
And she ends up blaming Bunny
She
for
does.
all of it. As if Bunny being the...
Oh, well, apparently it's further back than that.
Okay, well, I'll just... You know what? I do trust you. I do believe you. That's what it was.
But it's because of the way he approaches her, is he's like, you're not smiling.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Is more of a, like, that's... Think about a coworker you have that's usually bubbly and happy, and
Sure.
the second they're not, you notice.
Sure.
You're not saying you'd be prettier if you smiled. You're saying, wait a minute, why aren't you smiling?
I took it the wrong way. I guess I was seeing him as a sort of like putting his machismo on display.
Because she immediately then goes into, no, I'm seriously concerned.
So the mom, is...
The mom was just going up to check on Bonnie.
The mom makes a phone call, and Nell answers the phone and switches into the babysitter personality. And the kid's crying. She's like, it's a fire engine. I don't hear it. It's on the other side of the building.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
And, they have a fight. They have an altercation. And Nell sinks into this sort of childlike
Just
state.
sobbing in the corner.
Eddie finally comes out of the closet. He was locked in.
Yeah, he was locked in. That one wasn't his fault. That, and I mean, he's probably got a concussion.
He would have stayed in there anyway.
Yeah, he would have. He didn't have to go in there in the first place. When she went to the door and Jed was hiding behind the door, he only had to go around the corner and wait. He didn't have to go in the closet.
He was hit on the head, though.
He still didn't have to go in the closet.
Well, he went in the closet because the couple was at the door, and he
Right.
didn't want them to see her because...
All he had to do was go around the corner.
True. He decided to get in the closet.
He decided to
Is
get
that
in
the
the
only
closet.
queer element in this movie? Because we always try to
Probably.
find one. I
Yeah.
don't think we've got really one in this.
No.
No, it's more of just Nell's story. It's sort of this very sad, very tragic story of a woman who's in trouble.
There's no gender sexual elements at all.
Not at all. Like I said, her putting on the stocking is the most, sexy she
And
gets,
it's
and that was
not.
also to show that she was getting.
It's
into
actually
that role.
creepy.
It is more creepy than it is sexy.
It's not sexy to see this bitch rolling up my underwear.
You don't. I mean,
What the
like,
hell?
despite Marilyn is gorgeous in this
Yeah.
movie, as she always is.
But she's already creeped you out enough by that point that you're just like, what the fuck?
You don't get that energy from her. You get an ominous energy that sort of alternates with this pathos.
And it just goes to show you that everybody who told her that you're too beautiful to take seriously was full of fucking shit.
Mm-hmm.
Because every line she delivers is done as it was meant to be delivered. Like, I don't know how many takes we had with any of this. I don't know how long it took to film. But she's flawless. Spot on. Nailing it all.
So the house detective shows up finally and calls down. He says he says she's what does she call her, a maniac?
She's a maniac. She might be a killer. Get all the boys. Don't let her leave.
What evidence does he have to say she's a killer?
Bonnie being tied up.
Well, all right. Guess you
Nobody
could make
said
that.
anything about being a
I
killer.
got the detective character all wrong, I guess. That was just,
Like, and a detective, a cop of any kind, when a child is involved, is going to err on the side of caution and make it bigger than it is rather than smaller than it is because it's a child involved.
makes total sense.
And I would rather overdo it than underdo it and lose a kid.
Good point. So they finally do corner her in the lobby, where she has picked up a razor blade off of the counter, and is basically standing off with the razor blade at her own throat.
So for those who don't know, once upon a time, you could buy literally anything at these front desk areas. In today's hotels, it's like a little market where you can get like chips. Your coffee's usually down there. It's usually attached to like a Starbucks or a Caldi. and you can pick up necessities, charge it to your room, and whatnot. Back then, those necessities ranged from playing cards to aspirin to razor blades. You could literally get anything in these hotels.
Sure.
But it was uncommon for men to shave with straight razors. And imagine opening your suitcase and realizing you left your straight razor at home.
She doesn't have a straight razor. She's just got a razor blade. Like, I use a safety razor, and I prefer it. Although, also my house has one of those slots in the medicine cabinet. You just put your razor blades. It goes between the walls. They figured, like, I'll never fill up. Again, now we've got Lynn switching, would you say, maybe to the mother?
Yep.
And we have these characters flip a lot.
Everybody has a lot of layers. Every character is very well developed. Everyone has a story arc that does have a completed ending. And unless you agree that this is basically Swim Fan and the whole thing was sinister from the start, you know, there was no Philip, or Philip was just another obsession or whatever, and she's just doing this everywhere she goes, then there's no real villain, so there's no really villain wins following the Hollywood rules.
Is that okay? That's off?
Leaving it very ambiguous.
Do you think that was Anne? I don't think that was Anne Bancroft's voice.
I don't think so.
So, if not counting the singing, then yeah, she didn't have too much dialogue. Well, I mean, for a small part, she definitely did.
I mean, all of her dialogue was centered around their relationship and him, mostly, and how he needed to fucking change because she wasn't fucking interested in his bullshit.
Yeah.
And he literally went and was like, all right.
Yeah, he's like, he left for a couple
It was a matter of hours.
And came back a different man.
So when the parents left, the mom said, Mrs. Howell says,
Lovey,
I'll come back up around 11 and check on you. And then when she goes up to check, it's because Mr. Howell said, oh, it's okay, why don't you go check up a little early?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she was, a little bit concerned because of the phone call where she seemed like weird as fuck.
Right.
And as a mother, she's like...
So this whole movie takes place in the literal span of the time the movie is playing.
It's close to being in real time, too.
It's very close.
We don't have any jumps.
No.
So you could, no, I don't think there's any point where the movie stops and picks up later or earlier. There's no flashbacks, which is great. Can you imagine if they put a flashback in this movie? So it being in that way, like, it does lend itself very well to, like, as a play.
It does.
Where we're not in the head. There's a great scene when she's putting on the mom's makeup and it's silent. Mm-hmm. And we're just alone in there with her during this sort of tense moment.
Yes.
It's not quite Buffalo Bill in the mirror.
No.
It's way more subtle and way more innocent than that.
Yes, it's definitely not as sinister as that. Like, Buffalo Bill just had that villainous element. That's why, again, I don't disagree with the Criterion Channel putting her in that title, heroes to villains. Marilyn was never a hero. She was never a villain. Knock it off.
Yeah, it's a collection called Cast Against Type.
That I agree with. It doesn't exist.
Although I did kind of feel like it would be kind of like if there was a hotel now that was like this hotel where there was no Wi-Fi, analog. They pipe in the... every
room has a radio in the wall, and that radio gives you different channels. So, like, you could tune into your AM sports game or whatever, or a radio station, get some jazz. You could probably listen to freaking, I don't know, radio shows of the time. And then they also had, what did he say? Oh, it's Channel 10. It pipes you into the hotel bar.
Down with Lynn singing.
Yes.
And I guess he didn't want to listen to her sing because, like,
it had to be around 10 o'clock because they said that she was there every night until 10, and she was leaving when he came back down, intercepted her, and told her what had been going on.
He looks at his watch when he sneaks out, and it's 10 after 10.
Yeah, and that's why he was rushing to catch her when he tells her that story. So, the whole thing, it takes place...
You could. I mean, if there was a way, if there's any clock in the beginning of it, if I kind of thought ahead of time... Perhaps there was.
I don't know.
But it does. Like, there's another movie called The Setup, which is about a boxer that takes place in real time, and there's clocks all over, and you can time the movie by the clocks.
Nice.
Very good movie. Also, very sparse. Takes place in a few. There's a hotel room that most of the movie takes place in.
Yeah. I would like to see this presented to a college
this one?
theater department.
And did he Did he try to kiss you?
Emma, you've had a dreadful experience tonight, young lady. Is there anything we can get for you?
I don't want you to ask me any more questions.
We better go now.
Unless you'd like me to stay
Emma,
until...
for once, be quiet. We're leaving.
Yes, I want you to leave me now. It's something I have to do by myself.
If you ever dare to speak that way to me
Be
again...
quiet.
Let's talk about the reception of the movie. It was overall pretty good.
Yes.
I found a review on Wikipedia that I thought was a review from the time.
But it wasn't.
It turns out it wasn't. Let's see. Film critic Dennis Schwartz gave the film a mostly positive 2011 review and seemed to be captured by Monroe's performance. Although, I don't know. I kind of don't like his review. He wrote, wacko psychological thriller.
I mean...
Not off to good... wacko psychological thriller?
I mean...
It is...
I'll give him the thriller part.
Yeah.
It's suspenseful. It's very Hitchcockian.
Set entirely in a New York City hotel and helmed without urgency by Roy Ward Baker. It lacks emotional depth.
It does not. Mm-hmm. It's about emotional depth.
Yes, but is diverting as it gives off nervous energy and remains watchable throughout.
Okay, nervous energy, give him that.
Marilyn Monroe was in 12 previous films, but this was her first co-starring headliner role. Co-starring?
Huh?
Playing someone mentally deranged.
Wow.
Marilyn wonderfully channels how her mentally troubled mom acted. Okay, we knew that. And gives a believable performance. She's the best reason for seeing this forgettable pick.
What? I mean, you were right when you started the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
She is the reason you watched this movie.
Oh, you know what? That was, first of all, that's a bad review anyway. He just sums it up by saying who wrote the book.
Yeah, and I think he meant unforgettable for performance.
Exactly. Actually, okay, that was a bad review, but there's an even worse one from the time that I didn't scroll up to see. The Albany Times-Union film critic, this is when it came out, was unenthusiastic, having whooped, this is his words, having whooped the undeniable physical assets of Marilyn Monroe from the rooftops. Her home studio seems bent now upon telling the world that its blonde property is also geared for heavy dramatic acting.
Okay.
The effort put forth is something less than overwhelming and seems oddly unnecessary. Why not just let her just be Marilyn Monroe instead of a psychotic menace? Ms. Monroe walks through the picture as if she had been hit on the head. The action, transpiring entirely in the hotel, never gets higher than the 8th floor. The picture has a brunette stranger, Anne Bancroft, as a nightclub songstress who jilts Widmark, takes him back the same evening. Not sensational, but neither is she psychotic.
What the fuck?
That was a really awful review.
What the
Very,
fuck?
a little misogynist, would you think?
I understood the line about product because that's what they were considered. You were owned by your
Well,
studios.
that's just a word that, I mean, like, I
Like,
know
that
it wasn't
one makes
property.
sense. That
Yeah, Shirley Temple was a
Yeah.
MGM product, whatever it was.
because that you were owned by your studios.
Sure.
And you couldn't work for other studios unless you were loaned out. And yeah, so
Right.
that one made sense. It's a sign of its time. The rest of it though, like, bro, did we watch the same movie?
What
version did they release in theaters then? Because I don't think we watched the same movie.
Roger Ebert,
fuck
enemy of the show, did not review this movie, but I think he would probably have agreed with who is this asshole? He's unnamed. He's just the Albany Times-Union film critic. So, and it was reviews like that really
Probably was Roger Ebert.
The man, he probably still lives.
I
And
know.
he's probably giving terrible reviews of
Under a
movies.
whole new name now.
Good Lord. Enemy of the show. So, yeah, I think we have summed up this movie quickly. I'm going to say, again, so...
What was your favorite part? What was like your
My favorite part had to be when Jed first arrived and he was slowly starting to understand that something was happening. Because that was a turn. His character turned then, and so did hers. And when she gave these monologues too, like these monologues were great. and she started telling his story. I think that was my favorite because the entire movie shifted.
So like when he told her he was a pilot and it clicked for her?
Because this is her, the pieces of her fantasy started falling together. What was yours?
Oh, my favorite moment is easily that panning of Bonnie up.
Oh my God.
Because like on a first watch, on a second watch, like even on this watch, I don't know how many times I've seen that movie, I'm still like, that is Marilyn Monroe.
Yes.
I don't know what she did in her private life, but she was not exactly known for tying people up.
We don't see her tie her up, which to me makes it more sinister because we see the effects of her condition, of her state of mind.
Right, and how it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. She keeps going into the deep end.
It puts us like, because the mother comes in and walks in and sees her daughter tied up, and I had the same reaction.
We actually don't know what she walked in on, because the reason the officer got involved was because the operator lady who didn't smile because she kept hearing weird things through the phone, which was Marilyn talking to her. And from what we did see her saying, it's all your fault, you're evil, blah, 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 blah. We don't know what Mom actually walked in on.
Well, you remember they had that fight. So she walked in on
Something.
Nell kneeling in front of her
but
daughter
we don't
who
know
was tied
to
up.
the extent of what Nell was doing when she walked in.
She was on the brink of something. She's constantly on the brink of something. So you're right. I mean, there could have
Now,
been
it
something
looks
else going
like she didn't quite make it into a physical abuse element because Bonnie didn't seem beat up.
on. I mean, she had to subdue her to tie her up.
But Bonnie doesn't get a shit ton of screen time. It's very flash pass with her. And I wonder if they did that simply for child laws, like we're not going to abuse this kid on screen.
Well, also,
It's unnecessary.
she could have been a young Nell, too, the way she sort of like popped in and out, the way Nell kind of pops in and out of characters and back to being childlike and then back to being sinister.
Bonnie was never sinister. I just mean that her character...
No, not Bunny, no. She was sort of like, she was Nell's past. You know, she was that child at one point. Not that she was Bunny, but she just sort of like represented the way Nell's past kept coming back.
you get the feeling that Nell's parents were not the best parents.
Definitely not. Because I don't know, maybe they're not alive anymore, but for what, I mean, Nell's pretty young, so they could have not been able to handle her and sent her to the city to be institutionalized and live with her uncle.
Well, she was institutionalized back in Oregon and then came to her uncle's in New York for a fresh start. Somebody put her on the plane to New York. I'm assuming it's her parents.
Which also, if you are suffering like she is, New York is probably not the best place for you to be.
No. Actually, the Oregon coast would be a great place to be.
Yeah. Don't you miss the time when if you were like, like as a woman, like if you went to the doctor for something, they would recommend going to the ocean for sea air.
You know,
and sit with a starch blanket on the coast.
Look, I don't want to get political at all on this podcast, but I'm going to say one thing, and that is if they're going to strip away all of women's rights, then at least bring back treatments for hysteria. Okay?
Yeah, but
What
wasn't
that we get isolation whenever we start going a little nutty. You just isolate us in a beach house to calm down, get some fresh air. We get prescription vibrators.
Yeah, that was the cure.
Insurance is going to pay for this shit now.
Nobody thought an orgasm
Oh, you got a
existed.
kink? Insurance pays for that now.
Sounds.
If you're going to take away our rights,
it sounds like a.
Then let's go all the way
consolation.
back. Let's go all the way back.
Yeah, we'll prescribe you some laudanum.
When I'm on my fucking period, leave me the fuck alone. I'm unclean, motherfucker. Back off.
Not quite biblical. Or you'd have to be in a hut outside the house and throw away whatever chair you sit on.
That depends on where you're following.
We could be. I mean, we might go in that direction, but anyway.
Like, it really just depends. There are a lot of like Muslim and Jewish faiths who there's an entire area that's built. It is like a hotel, and it's all their version of kosher and whatnot, and you have access to spiritual baths and ritual cleansing and all these things, and it's just women living together in this. Do you know how often I'd have my period?
Well, all of you would sync up, so obviously.
Yeah, we would have like. I'm irregular. I have a period every week.
Let's. You know what? We're gonna buy Greenland. Let's make it the Isle of Lesbos. If only.
You have the Isle of Man. It's the Isle of Woman.
That's a good one.
Let's go.
Now, I think maybe, speaking of biblical, if Nell had been back then and had a little bit stronger delusion, she'd be a saint by now.
Probably.
You know?
She never said she heard voices, though.
No.
Never said she had visions.
But you know what?
And
if they probably could have coaxed her into admitting she did.
Yes, because at the end of the day, the man that she truly idolized and was seeking was Jesus.
Yeah. It was Jesus, obviously.
So everything she did was because she saw Jesus.
Yeah, it's off.
And that. Them too. Take off the other one. I want you looking like you looked when I brought you up here.
You stop it now, all of you!
I should have known better. You're not cured.
Don't you say that!
Put that down.
You're just like my folks. You want me put away again?
Talk sense. It wasn't their fault. They didn't send you to that institution. The doctors did.
You're trying to keep Philip and me apart. Everybody bothers us. We're never alone for 5 minutes. You're like them. Call it a sin to be with a man, even to go to a picture show or a soda. I can't even see him without sneaking out.
Wait a minute.
Nobody's going to come between Philip and me. And if that's what you came here for...
You got a man in there.
We don't really rate movies.
We really don't. It's hard.
I don't like that anyway, because if you know. But if it, you will give this movie 5 stars. It is a perfect film. Absolutely.
It is absolutely a perfect film. It has every element you could possibly want, while also remaining an absolutely classic film.
I wasn't sure. I had heard by Leo that this was...
It's my favorite Marilyn movie.
It is mine now as well. I mean, like, nothing compares to it. This is, like you said, her opus.
I did. I said this is absolutely her opus, and it saddens me as to what she could have done later. What she'd be doing today.
Yeah, so do not...
Maybe not
First
today,
of all, don't
but-
believe any of these quotes you see on social media that Marilyn said. Don't go buy the merch that has Marilyn with the face tattoos looking like a cholo. Watch this movie. You will see it. You will see her completely differently.
It is, yes, 100% from a different standpoint. It's a phenomenal film. It's easily in my top 10, like overall all favorite films, which interestingly enough, most of them are some sort of classic film. Like my favorite film of all time is Casablanca.
My favorite film of all time is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That's considered classic now. I mean, how old is that movie?
Followed by Lawrence of Arabia and Dead Man, which is going to be a future B&R review.
Yes, we're just trying to figure out where to stick that.
Yeah.
And what to stick it with, because that is the Johnny Depp month.
Sure.
And I don't know what to counter that
Johnny
with.
June. There we go.
Johnny June. Benny and June. Ha!
Oh, wait, no, June's Pride Month.
Yeah, June's Pride Month. We already have that lineup.
We got July. Johnny July.
Yeah. Well, we'll figure it out, my friends. We'll figure it out. Doesn't really matter. You know you want to stay tuned simply because you have no idea what's coming next.
Well, please stay tuned for the next one. I am so excited. This is a movie from my boyhood that was instrumental in shaping who I was.
And
I came of age.
As much as I love this movie, I think the best compliment that I can give this movie is that it is my 13-year-old's favorite movie. She loves this movie because boobs. So many perfect boobs.
I forgot about that. Inappropriate for some kids, very appropriate for this kid.
Well, she's a lesbian, so.
Right. That's what I mean. Should we give it away what it is so they can watch it ahead of time?
We've said a million times Evil
I
Tunes.
know.
It's the most romantic movie we know.
It is, right. February is going to be for lovers.
All about love.
And
All
Evil
about
Tunes is a love story.
It is a love story.
Believe
It is
us.
a love story. Like beyond Beauty and the Beast, Tale as Old in Time. This one goes back even older.
This is
Beyond
the
time.
Minotaur and what's her name?
Yes.
Not the Minotaur. The White Bull and insert name here.
I don't remember.
King Minos' wife.
Yes.
So yes, this is
the birth of the Minotaur. Yes.
Yes, this is the same.
The
This is the
conception of the
same
Minotaur.
story. And believe us, you know, this is a movie. We've got fine film and we've got schlock. And if you think that we're not going to treat the schlock with as much analysis and reach as we treat the classics,
You are wrong, my
Are
friend.
wrong.
So
Stay
very wrong.
tuned.
Evil Tunes and Orlando belong together.
Without a doubt.
Oh, we have to connect some dots before we end this. How do we connect Don't Bother to Knock with our previous films?
Good point.
So I suppose you could take them individually. Like, in what way does it connect to Night of the Demons? While you do have really bad mental health, because I'm pretty sure that Angela didn't get possessed by demons because she was a happy-go-lucky little girl.
Bunny grew up to be Angela.
That could be a thing.
Yeah. Well, there is a prevalent elevator in this and Mixed Nuts.
That's true. And most of the comedic scenes take place in said elevator in both films.
That is true. So there is a Mixed Nuts connection. We do, like I said, we're building the BNRCU, so we
have...
This is canon.
Like, you now have... I don't know if I can throw Tilda in here, so I'm just going to say you have two of the most beautiful blondes to ever walk the earth in Repo and now in this with Marilyn in Paris. And you can throw Tilda in there because she looks gorgeous as a blonde, but she's done her hair so many different colors. I don't know if
I would say the Orlando bit that I caught on was the way that Nell is just assuming that she and Jed are...
Oh, yeah.
You know, because I adore you.
It's exactly that. It's both Orlando, male Orlando, but it's also, I don't know, Sir Jeffrey, whatever the fuck his name was, that said it basically the same thing to Orlando that Orlando said to Sasha. And Nell is a little different in hers because she's living this fantasy where you are actually Philip, not Jeb, and we're going to live happily ever after, but it's because I want you to.
It is a thing. She is sort of male Orlando in that sense. And it kind of goes back to what I hit it on, where Jed starts out as the pursuer.
Right.
Or I would say not aggressor because he's not aggressive, but, you know, he initiates. He's the pursuer.
Yes.
And then he ends up not only withdrawing, but then, you know, obligated to stay and take care of these characters.
Correct. And not just Marilyn, but everybody now needs care.
So she does, like, in that sense, she does become the initiator.
Right, because as he's like kind of holding her in place, trying to get her to calm down, right as he's seeing her wrists, she's saying that. She's like, no, we'll live happily ever after. And he's like, no. She's like, but yes.
You become more and more unraveled as this night goes on.
Like, and he's telling her that, and she's like, yes, but... Mm-hmm. You belong, we belong together, we belong together, we belong together, and all of that. So there's your Orlando tie. I don't know. I mean, obviously you can connect Orlando to little Mikey from Deep End with their obsessions.
Of course.
And needing to latch on and how it's not going to end well for either of them.
Technolust is a stretch. I don't know. You can't. Well, you can't. I mean, like, Technolust was related more to Repo than probably anything else.
Technolust is like this. It's like the farmer in the Dell and the cheese stands alone, but it's Technolust stands alone. You know.
Technolust stands alone. I love that movie.
Like,
I can't get over it.
Oh no, Technolust was another one we did blind.
We did.
That was our first blind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't, I mean, you want to name worst movies, something we would name blind, like, you got to put Repo against Technolust? I can't do that.
It's too early to call. We've got a lot of movies to get through.
That's true, and some shit might be shit, and some shit might be fucking golden nuggets.
Hopefully one of the blind ones will split on. I think that's interesting.
So far it hasn't happened. We've left both of them. But they were set up that way.
We had different opinions on Deep End.
Deep End wasn't a blind watch. It was only a me blind.
Oh, yeah, well, okay. But this was a me blind, and I loved it.
Yes. You were supposed to go in blind to Mixed Nuts.
Well, we don't speak of that.
But he cheated, and I'm never going to let him forget it. Revenge. Overall, like I said, my personal favorite Marilyn Monroe movie, one of my favorite classic movies of all time, definitely in the canon of twisted women movies.
Do watch it. Do yourself a favor. We'll wrap it up here. This has been blazed and reviewed. I finally got the name right.
You did. You got it right on the first go-round.
And so keep watching great movies. Keep watching bad movies. Just love them.
Keep getting stoned. Keep getting high. Keep exploring.
Keep blazing. Keep reviewing.
That's right.
Keep on trucking.
And as always, our calendar is filling up. But if you've got movies you want to bring to us, by all means, drop them in the comments. Send us an email. All the contact information's there. Follow on Instagram. all the goodies. You know how this works.
Take care of each other.
And let us know what you're watching next. See you next time.
This has been Blazed and Reviewed. Please join us next time for another venture into the cinematic hellscape. Check out the Rin links to make friends, see our other projects, and have your gasters flabbered by art and writing. As a production of Downtown Delphi Studio. Oh, and one more thing. We have a mailing list for you to keep informed about new episodes, new projects, and indispensable knowledge. Please consider signing up. Thank you for listening. Bye, 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 bye. Bye, 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 bye.